Welcome to the Actually I Can Female Entrepreneur podcast. I am your host, Kayleigh Greenacre, a business strategist, coach, TEDx speaker, author, and your go-to woman for all things business strategy. I am obsessed with supporting female entrepreneurs to grow unstoppable six and multi-six-figure businesses that they love, giving them the freedom and life that they desire. During this podcast, I'll be sharing with you everything that you need to become a successful female entrepreneur, from the mindset shifts to sales and marketing strategies and how to become an iconic leader that people can't get enough of. It is my mission to help you stand out, attract your dream clients and customers, and sell out of your offers with ease whilst building the business and life of your dreams. Let's make this your reality, ladies. Hello, ladies, and welcome to another episode of Actually I Can, the Female Entrepreneur Podcast. And I'm joined today by the fabulous Claire Bartlett, who is a business strategist. And we are going to be diving into pushing for success regardless of personal challenges. Claire, it's an absolute pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited for this conversation.
Absolutely. And I think the conversation that we're about to have and what we're going to dive into will hopefully support and help so many of our listeners, especially if they are struggling with some personal challenges and setbacks and mindset shifts and all the things. So I'm really, really excited to dive into today's episode. But before we dive into that, I would love for you to share a little bit with our audience, with our listeners, about you and your own personal journey.
Of course. So I have been a business owner for nearly 10 years now. And when I launched my first business, it was out of sort of necessity, really. You know, I just had my daughter. I didn't want to go into full-time employment. And in the career that I was in, which was accountancy, you didn't get part-time flexible work. I mean, flexible working was not a term 10 years ago, was it? So I set up the business and I have fought a lot of demons throughout that journey, which is why I think this is going to be a really interesting topic to share with you, because I had no faith in myself really in the beginning, and my confidence has grown so much through that time. So yeah, it's been a journey, lots of lessons learned the hard way, and now I thoroughly enjoy helping people avoid those mistakes themselves.
Yeah, amazing. Okay, perfect. So let's dive into this. And I think that one of the first things to start talking about is mindset, because mindset plays such an important part of our success and obviously our self-belief as well. And, you know, let's start off by sort of diving into the concept of potentially our listeners or any female entrepreneurs, if they're navigating through any tough challenges or tough times, what mindset shifts would you say are essential for them to really keep moving forwards with their passions, with their journey, with their, you know, pathway to success?
Yeah, I mean, that's such a huge question, because I think we all have mindset shifts that we need, and that changes throughout the journeys of business. But I think the groundwork is just self-belief. You have to believe that you can achieve whatever it is. You know, you have to say, actually, I can. And I think in the beginning that can be really difficult. I think with societal messages that come across since we've been children, you know, we don't see hugely successful female entrepreneurs, you know, outside in the community. We mainly see men, and those are the ones that are spoken about. So we don't see role models out there to tell us that actually there are hundreds of successful women. They're just not spoken about as much. So it's believing that we can achieve whatever level of success looks like for you, whatever you're dreaming of. You have to believe that you can get there. And there's certain mindset shifts that you need to make to be able to have that belief in yourself.
Absolutely. And I think, you know, there's so much that can be said about mindset. And I know, you know, it's an absolute massive topic. We could be talking about mindset for absolute hours.
I
know. But I think with mindset, absolutely, it's believing, it's understanding and knowing that, you know, all of us are on our own pathways, all of us are on our own journeys. And I think as well that when it comes to struggles and challenges that people face, I think a lot of the time it's not actually talked about. It's you know, it's something that people always, you know, show the highlights, or people assume or see the highlights from other people. And quite often I think it is more so now that people share their, their struggles and their challenges, but quite often it's quite easy to ignore the fact or not even notice the fact that people are going through their own challenges. And so I think then when you're on your own pathway, it's very hard sometimes to stay really focused and motivated because you see the perfect life and the perfect entrepreneur on the outside, but ultimately everyone goes through their own challenges that they need to overcome, don't they, on the journey?
Yeah, and I think this is the biggest thing. We get blinded by this Insta lifestyle that everything is
Yeah.
perfect for all of these successful entrepreneurs that we might be looking up to. But actually, what we need to understand is that everybody has their issues. Everyone has mindset challenges. They just differ as you go through the journey. But we're never done. It's never, a completed journey, is it? When it comes to mindset, there's always more work to be done. And I so often hear from my clients, they're trying to compare themselves to somebody who's 10 years down the line when they're only in year one.
Yes.
And that can really be damaging to the mindset where you think, God, look at how successful they are. Why am I not getting the same level of success? Well, they've been grafting for 10 years. There's no such thing as an overnight success. You just don't see those hard early days because they're not as successful and they're not as visible. So yeah, the comparisonitis is a killer for the mindset, and it's really important to use them as inspiration and motivation, but don't let them damage, your own journey and your own self-belief.
Absolutely. I think 100% using it as inspiration because it is a very hard route to go down. Being an entrepreneur is a hard thing to do. And,
Yeah.
and it's so easy to be, like you said, kind of influenced to an extent, but also to think that you should be further on than you are when actually, as I always say, you are where you should be right now. And everything that you do, every action that you take will support you in continuing to grow, continuing to move forwards. I think another thing that people often struggle with in the entrepreneurial world, and I'm sure everyone has experienced this at some point for those that are listening, is overwhelm. And potentially even burnout as well. But let's stay with overwhelm for the time being. And I think it is very easy to get overwhelmed with, whether it's social media and posting, whether it's client work, if you're a service provider, whether it's, dispatches, if you're a product-based business, there's a lot that you can get overwhelmed with.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you would advise our listeners on if they are kind of feeling a little bit overwhelmed at the moment with their workload or what they need to do?
Yeah. This is the route that I help the most on, because when you feel overwhelmed or you reach burnout, then you lose that joy in the
Yes.
business. You lose the passion for what got you into this business in the first place. So it's it's really difficult. There's so much noise, isn't there, when it comes to business? I should be doing that. I should have a website. I should have an email list. I should do this, that, and the other. And actually, sometimes you need to just strip the noise back, especially if you're a solopreneur. It's only you running that business. We only have a certain amount of time in each day, and we have other responsibilities, children's and families and husbands and friends and all of the other things that keep our energies high. They're the ones that recharge our batteries. So it's really important to keep that balance. And I think if you're struggling to keep your website up to date and it's causing you a lot of stress, then maybe if it's not, you need to then analyze, well, how many leads is this actually generating for me? Is it worth that amount of energy right now in my business? If it isn't, maybe we just close that down for now. We eliminate that from our workload and focus on the other areas that are bringing in the leads. There's so many things that we could be doing and we think we should be doing as business owners, but actually I'd say, so much of it, 50% or more, is just noise that actually isn't feeding the business and isn't benefiting us at this point in our journey.
And I think it's interesting, isn't it? Because again, there's so much information online, whether it's on social media or whether it's on Google or whether it's in books and podcasts. I don't think it even matters, but there is so much information out there of what entrepreneurs should be doing
Yeah.
based on people's own opinions, that it's almost as if we are thrown millions and millions of pieces of advice and information. How do you identify or pick out as an entrepreneur what you should focus on?
Yeah, this is quite a funny story here. So I challenged myself in 2023 to
Mm.
read 52 books in that year. I love to read.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I didn't quite make it, but I hit about 40, 45 or something in the year. And they were all business or personal development books and I love reading them. But I carried it into 24 and I read loads of books again in 24. And I actually realized that I was starting to feel really overwhelmed and I was taking on so much information. And obviously, everybody's information and advice is conflicting because that's been their personal journey and someone else has done it another way. And I thought to myself, I need to have a break from all of this, from all of the courses, from all of the, the different podcasts and books, because I'm not giving myself the time to actually implement any of the things that I'm learning. I was reading a book and thinking, yeah, that's great, that's great, that's great, and then moving on to the next book without actually spending the time to implement. So some things will resonate really deeply with you and you'll be like, that is an amazing idea. I love that. And I can implement that today in my business. But there's so much other information that doesn't suit your business model, doesn't suit your personal values. There's so many different ways of doing things. And I think it's just about giving yourself the time to process the information. Don't overload yourself with information, but then also just sitting what aligns with you, which information fits you and your business and where you're wanting your business to go. Because there's a lot of pressure, I think, in today's world to be building 6 or 7 figure businesses and, always be on the go and always be trying to move to that next level. But actually, that's not everybody's dream. We don't all want that level of pressure. Some of us just want, 30, 50, 70 grand a year turnover, a lifestyle business. And if that's what you want, then that is perfect. Don't get, muddied down with everybody else's, vision of what success looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. Great advice. And I think a lot of the time as well, when people first start growing their businesses, they're normally working in a job, for example, maybe a full-time job or a part-time job, or they're juggling being a mom, or maybe they're doing all of the things. And ultimately that's really challenging, because you don't have the time to be answering all of your DMs urgently or to be creating hours of worth of content. And I think it's realizing, isn't it, as an individual, what are your priorities, and really thinking about what are the things that you need to do, what are the actions that you need to take in order to move this business forwards. And like you said, every female entrepreneur will have their own goals. It's not necessarily to hit 7 figures. So actually the actions and the steps that you need to take aren't necessarily always going to be the same as a 7-figure entrepreneur. So exactly. I think it is really identifying that, isn't it, as an individual?
Yeah, you need to have a vision and you need to know where you're wanting your business to go. And then, not getting muddied down with what everyone else is saying you should be doing in your business, because should is a really loaded word. You should be doing this, you should be doing that. Well, actually, none of that is getting me to my vision. And I say I've been in business for 10 years now, and I've launched this second business, which is the Business Strategist, which I'm loving. But I have to be realistic in my goals at the moment, because I still have a full-time business to run. Yes. So, and that has been challenging for me, because I'm so used to being able to implement and do whatever I need to do in that moment, having all the time. And suddenly my time is really limited for this new business. And I had to really assess what a real goal was, a really achievable goal. I couldn't turn over 7 figures in the first year. I don't have the time to give the business to achieve that. That's a struggle. And that was something, that impacted me mentally, that the business wasn't moving as fast as I had previously. But in reality, I didn't have the same level of time. So I had to be kind to myself and stop putting that level of pressure on me. And that's, I suppose, the biggest lesson is to be kind and realistic with what you can give to your business. Like you say, if you are, a young mum, you've got young children at home, or you already are employed, whatever challenges you have is going to be unique to you. And you have to be kind to yourself to realize those expectations.
Absolutely. And I think a big part of success comes down to your resilience as well, doesn't it? And it's the mindset side of things, and it's also that resilience and staying resilient even through, and grounded actually, even through difficult periods of time and challenges, because like we said earlier, all of us will face challenges, and whether that's personal challenges and struggles, or whether it's actually all focused in the business as well. Is there any advice that you could give for our listeners in regards to kind of resilience and trying to really stay motivated and focused on their goals?
Yeah, I think the biggest lesson is to keep your why in mind, why you're wanting to achieve it, what that end goal is for yourself. Because if you can keep that in mind, you never lose sight of that. That can give you the determination you need to get back up again when you've been knocked down. And also, again, being realistic that you will get these knockbacks. I remember the first time that I lost a client, it was due to no fault of my own. You know, they just moved practice. I was absolutely devastated. I felt like it was the worst thing in the world that could ever happen to me. You know, I'm crying on the phone to my husband. It was a traumatic thing for me. But actually, that was just the first time. And then the next time and the next time, you feel less, you know, sort of emotional about it, and you realize that it's just business. But you have to go through those first, you know, roadblocks to understand and remove the emotion from it, I suppose, because
yes.
it's, for me, the business was my baby. You know, I was so emotionally entangled with it that I took things really personally in the beginning, and that can then damage your resilience because you feel like you're taking personal hits. So it's about realizing the difference between something happening to you personally and something that's happening to the business. And again, I think that's something that we struggle with, especially as women. We are emotionally attached to things, you know, we care, we're heart-led. And I think sometimes it can be really difficult to separate yourself, your emotions, from the business. I think that's a really important lesson to learn, that when something happens to the business, it's not a personal attack. It's just, it's business.
Do you know, I completely agree, because we can become so attached to our businesses, and I, for one, as well, have done previously, you know, in the sense of we want to protect our business and it's our name. And for those of us that have got personal brands, again, it's very much us, and we're representing ourselves. But you're absolutely right, it is business, and there is a difference. You know, what is business, and you as an individual is you know, a separate factor. So I completely would agree with that. And I think just resilience is so key, isn't it, and so important in terms of your success. I think one of the other things as well that I'd love to dive into with you is habit stacking, or habits and routines, because I know I've spoken about this on the podcast before previously, but having habits and daily habits, or what we call habit stacking, is just so important, and will help people stay productive, stay on top of things, and obviously working towards their goal, working towards their why, etc. Do you have any advice around habit stacking or creating routines in their schedules every day and every week?
Yeah, so I would say that it's critical, but it's a lesson that I learned the hard way. So for the first few years in my business, I didn't have any routines or habits. I was sort of, you know, just falling forward and constant. My business grew very quickly. And it's something that I've had to then retrospectively put into my business, which makes it a lot harder. So if you can do it from, you know, the early stages of your business, it makes it a lot easier. The things that I do in my business now is I time block in my diary.
Yes.
That's really helped me massively, because I have quite a short attention span. So I can get distracted by an email popping up, or I can get distracted really easily, and I can flip between tasks and then nothing gets completed. So having that structure and that time blocking in my diary really helped me with that. Turning off all my notifications, so I don't get, my phone doesn't ping if someone messaged me on Instagram, my emails don't ping, you know, turning off all of those distractions. And in the time blocking, I have spaces called, like, I call it white noise, and I literally block off some time in my diary, but for no purpose. So it's, if there's something that I haven't managed to get to and finalize, I've got that time in my diary. If it's purely for me to go and get some fresh air and go for a walk and clear my head, it just gives me, it takes the pressure off. I always know I have that safe space in my diary every week, that if, you know, because things happen, you can block your diary and it can look perfect, and then something, you know, really urgent comes in and throws the whole week off. We've all been there. So it's again, it's being kind and taking the pressure off and allowing yourself some free time in your diary. But you need to block it in, because if you don't, you won't stick to it. It will get filled very easily with those other tasks.
It's great advice, and I completely agree with that. And time blocking is so powerful, and it would just keep you organized. Because again, you know, from my own perspective, from my own experience, should I say, having gone from working in schools as an assistant head and having literally lessons each day and then meetings, and everything is scheduled in based around the education system. Moving into this business as an entrepreneur, although I'd been an entrepreneur previously in a different business, this was very different, going full time and then thinking, right, well, I've got a week, I've got my own diary, I've got to manage it. What am I doing? What am I doing? And, you know, and I've got set coaching days, for example. All of my clients will know I coach on a Monday and Thursday, and they're my 2 coaching days. I coach daytime and evening, both those days, because they're my coaching days where I focus purely on coaching. But then my other days, I time block different things, whether it's content creation, podcast recording, you know, doing other things. And I think it's so powerful to be able to do that. But I love also the fact that you've said, but also block some time out for you and have, you know, whether you call it CEO time or whether you call it, you know, wellness time, go for a walk, like you said, and just have some you time, because I think, again, that self-care or that, you know, that balance is really, really key. And you're completely right. I think as entrepreneurs, so many of us can get into this cycle of you'll just keep working and working and working and working and working, because there is no end. There's no end to the work that we do. So having that opportunity to block that in, and even going back to, you know, to the concept of boundaries as well. I know it's a slightly different concept, but also, you know, not having to respond to DMs in the evening if you just want to switch off, or working weekends. Again, everyone's concept around boundaries is very different, but it is something to bear in mind, isn't it? And obviously, again, will support you with your resilience, your motivation and your energy to make this a success.
Yeah, I think it does. The word energy is key for me. I think it all comes down to, you know, there's certain tasks that will really deplete my energy. It will be different for everybody, and certain tasks that I love and really, you know, get the passion really flowing again for the business. So I think it's important to understand that about yourself, make sure that you have a good balance of the two. And spread it out through your week. So don't block an entire day of all the tasks that really suck your energy, because you're going to feel rubbish at the end of that day. So keep that balance. I also, talking about boundaries quickly, is I block in time to check my emails. I do it once in the morning and once after lunch. I'm not constantly in there. And when I first implemented that, you know, it was scary. God, a client's going to think I'm, you know, I'm rude or I'm not replying quickly enough. Some people put an automatic response on saying that my email is not checked regularly. I personally haven't done that, purely because it really annoys me when my inbox gets filled up with automatic replies. So I haven't put them on, but my clients just get used to my routine. You know, they know when to expect.
Go back to you. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And something else that I think is really important to discuss today is a concept of self-doubt. So we've dived into mindset, and I know we've talked about resilience and routines and habits. One of the things that I think massively holds female entrepreneurs back, or any entrepreneur, to be honest with you, is this kind of concept of self-doubt, and also potentially even imposter syndrome. And especially when we're faced with challenges, again, with their personal challenges or challenges within the business, around our personal circumstances, you know, is there anything that our listeners can do to try to overcome that self-doubt or imposter syndrome? And I know they're two very different things, but I would just love to kind of touch on your advice for both of these.
Yeah, so when it comes to imposter syndrome, I really hate that term, because it's a man-made term. It's not a syndrome, you know, it's not a real thing. It's something that we label ourselves with having. We create that label and we tell ourselves, oh, we've got imposter syndrome. We don't feel like we're you know, strong enough to go into that room and give that speech, or whatever it is that we feel we're giving ourselves imposter syndrome over. So I think the first thing is to recognize that actually this isn't real. This is a label that we're telling ourselves, and we can then change the framework and the wording that we're using around that. Imposter syndrome really is just feeling fear, being scared and nervous of the unknown. And all of those things are natural responses. And everybody will feel those, no matter how many times they've stepped on stage, how many times they've been interviewed, you know, no matter the level of success, if it's a new situation that they're going into, they will feel those emotions. It's just that at some point you realize that it's not imposter syndrome, and you do deserve to be there in that space, whatever that opportunity is for you. It's just that because it's a new situation, you're feeling all the feels. And that is okay. And that's completely natural. Self-belief is more deep rooted, isn't it? It's sort of an all-encompassing thing, and it's much harder to overcome. So the things that I do on a daily basis is I gratitude journal. I do my affirmations every morning, and that the affirmations really did impact me, because when I tuned into how I spoke to myself internally, I realized that actually I was not being kind at all, and I was saying a lot of negative things to myself. And you do it so subconsciously that you don't even realize that you're doing it anymore. And some of those things can be so deep rooted from childhood, or from one thing that's a stranger said to you as they passed 10 years ago, you've held on to. So the first thing with that is just to tune in and hear when you're doubting yourself, the words that you're using. And there's a really powerful 3-letter word that you can use in these situations. So if you have self-doubt and you don't feel at the moment that you could public speak, for instance, if you could go on stage and share your journey, instead of just saying to yourself, I can't do that, I could never do that, just put yet on the end of the sentence. I can't do that yet. And it completely changes your mindset, because if you say, I can't do that, you are closing yourself off to all the opportunities that potentially show themselves in the universe. If you want a new car, you will suddenly see that brand of car everywhere, because you've switched on your conscious mind, and you're looking for it. It's the same for opportunities. So if you are telling yourself, I could never do that, your mind goes, okay, they never want to see that sort of opportunity. But if you just put yet on the end, I can't do that yet, your subconscious says, okay, today is not that day, but maybe tomorrow is. I will keep showing those opportunities to you. So that is a really powerful word, because I think sometimes people say, change it. So I can do that from I can't. But actually, sometimes that just feels like too big a leap. And it's too hard for you to believe in that moment that you can do it. But you can believe that today is not the day, but maybe in the future it might be.
What a fantastic way of reframing it as well, because absolutely I'm one of those people that would be like, actually I can, that's the name of my business, that's everything I believe in. But I love that way of looking at it and adding in that word at the end, just to be yet, because like you say, people's mindsets plays such a massive part on our self-belief, and actually if we genuinely don't believe that we can do it, the difference between I can't and I can is massive. There's a lot of steps in order to get there. So I absolutely love that advice, and I'm hoping everyone listening to the podcast could actually be able to kind of implement that, or even consider that word if they're really struggling with a certain aspect of their business, or with actually completing something or what they're working towards. But I love that as advice. I'll try that myself. I think it's great. Amazing. We're coming towards the end of the episode, Claire, and I would love to know, what's your final piece of advice for our listeners today?
I think it has to be kind. It's a long journey when it comes to mindset and self-belief. It's not an overnight fix. It's day by day, and using that word and changing that mind frame there with using yet is just the first step. And eventually, as you keep working on yourself and keep improving your mindset, you will get to the day like Kayleigh and me, where you say, yes, I can. I love the phrase, say yes, and then figure it out after. I do that all the time. So if there's a new opportunity come to me, I use the 5-second rule. I blurt out the word yes, and then I go away and think, okay, I've just agreed to go and speak in front of 500 people. How am I going to do that? And then I panic and I work it out afterwards. So you just have to take daily steps towards the bigger goal.
Amazing. And so final question, and this is the question that I ask everyone that come on to, or who comes on to my podcast as a guest. What is your word of the year and why?
So my word for 25 is joy, because I worked really hard last year and I lost the balance slightly with the joy and the finding time for my friends and family. So this year is bringing that balance back and bringing more joy into my life.
I love that. Claire, it's been an absolute pleasure having you here on the podcast today. Where can our listeners find you and connect with you?
So I'm on Instagram, CS_Bartlett, Facebook, Claire Bartlett, LinkedIn. I'm on all the platforms, so they'll find me.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And thank you so much to everyone that's tuned in to today's podcast episode. Please don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast, and I'll see you all again next time.
Thank you for tuning in to the Actually I Can Female Entrepreneur podcast with me, your host, Kayleigh Greenacre. If you are ready to build, grow and scale your dream six-figure or multi-six-figure business, then head to our website now for more information or connect with me on socials to see how you can create your dream business and dream life.